Hi, I'm Richard Rogers, and I absolutely hope that you enjoy today's spiritual message. You know, we at Unity of Phoenix Spiritual Center are committed to helping people live better lives. We're going to provide you tools over and over, spiritual tools that allow you to live your best possible life. And if you want to leave a donation to continue to allow the work that we do to support other people just like you, we say thank you. Thank you for your generosity, because this ministry is committed to making the world a better place.
All right. Good evening again, everybody. All right. So this man joins this priesthood in a monastery of silence. And in this order, you can't speak for 7 years. And after 7 years, you only get to say 2 words. So after the first 7 years pass, the guy goes into the abbot and he speaks his 2 words and he says, "Bed hard." And the abbot says, "Well, we'll do our best to try and get you a more comfortable bed." Then 7 more years of silence goes by, and the guy comes in again to talk with the abbot, and he says, "Food bad." The abbot says, "We'll do our best to try and spice up the meals, make them a little more delicious for you." Then 7 years later, after 21 years, 7 years later, he says his 2 words, "I quit." And the abbot says, "Well, I'm not surprised. Ever since you got here, all you've done is complain, complain, complain." So, all right. So how many people here have ever been on a silent retreat? All right, a few of us. How many people would say that when you sit in the silence, that sometimes you get a little fidgety and it's hard to sit still? Anybody? Okay. And how many people think that this silence thing's a pretty good thing, but you're really not quite sure how to do it or how to start a practice of silence? Okay. So as you all know, I did a 10-day silent meditation retreat this summer at the Southern California Vipassana Center in 29 Palms, California. Now, I had done a lot of 3-day meditations on my own throughout the years. I did a 4-day meditation at the Self-Realization Fellowship in Encinitas, California, with my sister a couple years ago. But 10 days of not speaking, 10 days of silence was a little bit new for me. I was curious, I was excited, I was a little nervous, to be honest. And I'll tell you, the 10 days was harder. It was different, it was better, it was more transformational and more awakening than I imagined it would be. And I don't know what kind of expectations I had, other than thinking it would be pretty good, it would be pretty cool. But I'll tell you, it exceeded my expectations in so many ways. It was truly, truly an amazing experience. In fact, one of the reasons I didn't have much expectation is because they had 3 different buildings you had to go to, and they were sand roads, so I was more concerned about physically how to negotiate to get place. So I was actually more concerned about that than about it, but I knew that it would be good. Somebody ended up going, who was going to it, offered and to give me some assistance here and there, and it was an amazing experience. So since I've returned, I have not had the opportunity to share it because we have been doing that fabulous Sunday series called On Fire, and just have not had the time. So Reverend Rogers wanted to do a 2-week series called Getting Still, and he thought that I'd kick it off while he's on vacation, and I would do my sharing of my 10-day silent retreat. So tonight's talk is entitled Getting Still Part 1, or What I Learned on My Summer Vacation. Either title will work. The number one question I've been asked since I got back was, what was it like to not talk for 10 days? And they would say, "Hey, I don't think I could go without speaking for 10 days. So besides not speaking, their silence included no reading, no writing or journaling, no cell phones. They took them away. They took your wallet away. I'm not sure why. No TV, no exercise, no eye contact with other people, no physical contact with other people, no outside contact with the outer world. You had to stay within the boundaries of the facility. They encourage you to eat only 75% of the food that you would normally eat. You had to wake up every morning at 4 a.m. And we didn't finish programming until 9 p.m. And so there was no speaking. There was silence unless that you needed to speak to the teacher, and you could make a 5-minute meeting with them. Or if you needed something like you forgot medication or something emergency, you could talk to the manager. But other than that, everything was in silence. Moving between the 3 buildings was done in silence. Eating was done in silence. Being in your room, everything was about silence. And I got to tell you, I loved not speaking for 10 days. I loved being in the silence. There was almost a sacredness as you moved from building to building. There was a sacredness and a reverence about just being in that place. That everywhere we moved, everywhere we went to, there was something so peaceful. One of my favorites, I really enjoyed eating in silence. There was something so beautiful about it. Every morning I ate hot oatmeal, and it tasted so good. I just loved it. And I would have peanut butter on toasted multi-grain bread with strawberry preserves, and the crunchiness of that bread and the gooiness of the peanut butter and the sweetness of the strawberries. And sometimes I'd stick in my mouth and I'd drink some hot peppermint tea, and you could feel it kind of burn as it went down. 31 meals I ate in silence. And it was such a sacred, amazing thing to taste the food, to feel the crunch. And it was incredible. Overall, I would say it was so calming and relaxing. There was an ease to it. I didn't feel stressed or worried. And some of my type A-ness didn't really, it was just kind of gone. It was really cool to feel comfortable. And another thing that was great was being in a room with 75 other people who are in silence meditating. Woo! There was an energy about that was just absolutely phenomenal. It was so nurturing. I mean, it felt healing. There was just something incredible about it. And another thing about not speaking and being silent for everything, you actually felt more present. You felt more aware. You kind of felt more alive. At no point in the 10 days did I think, man, this is only day 3. I can hardly wait till. I never wanted anything to speed up. There was no place I wanted to be other than there during this experience. And it's like I listened more, I looked and noticed more, I felt more engaged, and I felt more connected to myself. I felt more connected to life. It was really, really an amazing experience. The thing I think silence, I think did for me, it's helped slow everything down. Slowed down my body, slowed down my thinking. It just slowed everything down. And it created more space. You know, in the story of Jesus' birth, remember how there was no room in the inn? And he had to be born in a quiet, open space. And I think that's symbolic. When life is too crowded and no room in the inn, whether it's in our thoughts or our lives are so busy, you know, it's in the quietness where the Christ was born. To me, it's in the quiet and open spaces where the inspiration and ideas, not just peace, but inspiration and wisdom comes to us and comes through us. 3 of the things I thought immediately about the silence, I felt rest and renewed. I felt a sense of clarity and awareness, and I felt a level of inspiration and creativity. Things just started coming. You know, Einstein, when he wanted to create or do the deeper things, you know the first thing he did? He took a nap. Because sometimes getting out of your head and getting quiet is one of the best things you can ever do for yourself. If you look at Jesus, he went apart a while. We'd say, come apart a while and rest. I mean, that was an important part. He went consistently to quiet his mind. And so the first thing I learned from this silence was that there's deeper levels of peace. It calms you. You feel rested and renewed. You feel a level of clarity, and it gives inspiration and creativity. There's something, you feel more alive. You feel more engaged. Because when we're so busy, there's a lot that we don't notice. When we're so busy, there's a lot that we miss, and particularly stuff from within ourselves. Another thing the 10-day silence really showed me was it taught me about my mind. How many people ever meditated and your mind wandered? Anybody ever have that? You start, thinking, oh man, I need to pick up some milk, and geez, I forgot the plumber, and then that clerk, that fry, she was so rude to me, I couldn't stand it. She said, she was so cold, and your mind's going there while you're meditating. So think about when you meditate. So whether you meditate 5 minutes, 10 minutes, what percentage would you say your mind is distracted or wanders when you meditate? How many people would say 10%? I would say like 20%. I would say like 40 or 50%. How many would say more than 50 sometimes? Okay. So imagine what your mind would do if you meditated for 11 hours a day. How much do you think your mind would wander if we meditated? And we meditated 11 hours a day for 10 days, over 100 hours. I mean, really, with that amount, I should have come back like Moses coming down from Mount Sinai, radiating with long white hair. I didn't, but it probably... So that amount of meditation, I just have to say, was incredible. I meditate a fair amount, but I have never in my life ever come close to 11 hours a day. So here's what meditating 11 hours a day does. You become to be more aware of how much your mind wanders, how much your mind is distracted, how much your mind drifts. And where does it drift? It drifts in two places. Towards the past, with regrets, and towards the future, about any fear and anxiety we have. Goes to both of those places. From things, and the two particular patterns they have are aversion and attachment. Aversion, we go to the things we hate, we dislike, this shouldn't have happened, that was wrong. That's aversion. And the other one is attachment, where we think it should have happened this way. How many people here ever overthink anything? Okay. Any control freaks in the house? So that's attachment, is that when we obsess, when we overthink, and we want to control. Those are the two patterns that our minds tend to jump to over and over. Remember when the Apostle Paul said, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind? Do you know why he said that? Because he knows the human mind gets distracted so often, we have to keep renewing it. Keep renewing it. Keep renewing it. The mind wanders a lot, and it wanders a lot more when you try to meditate. And when the mind starts to meditate and you're meditating, you start thinking stuff like, man, this meditation stuff doesn't work. Or I can't do this. I just give up. I mean, it's horrible. You get frustrated with it. You think it's too hard. You think, man, I hate meditation. And then your mind's bouncing around so many places. The fact is, our minds can drive us crazy. We can overthink and get obsessed with things, and we tend to create our own suffering in our own heads. 7 people withdrew from the program because their silence, they couldn't deal with some of the thoughts that were coming up. The length of silence, makes us realize that we make up a lot of stuff and a lot of drama goes on in our own head, even when we're sitting in a peaceful place. And so the long silence really begins to give us an invitation to look at our own mind and to understand it a little bit better. And one of the facts is the human mind wanders. That's a fact. That it's important that we do not expect, if that makes sense, that our minds will be calm all the time. To do that is to fight against reality. And when you fight against reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. Trying to fight against the fact that your mind wanders, as Byron Katie would say, is like trying to teach a cat how to bark. So the reality is, if the human mind wanders, the question is, how do we handle it? And here are 2 ways. It's through acceptance and compassion. that when your mind wanders, don't judge it, hate it, get angry. Just accept there's my human mind doing what my human mind does. Acceptance, not resistance or aversion. And then have compassion. Don't beat yourself up because you aren't getting it right, because that's just normal. Make sense, everyone? Acceptance and compassion, because your mind is going to do its human dance. It's called monkey mind. It's what all minds do. And then the other things is to have patience and be persistent. So you're meditating, the mind wanders, you accept, have compassion, and bring it back to your breath, bring it back to God, bring it back to what you were meditating on, and have patience and persistence and start again. Wanders, acceptance and compassion, patience and persistence, bring it back, and that's how the pattern goes. One of my favorite Buddhist sayings says, it doesn't matter how many times you forget, it's how many times you remember. It doesn't matter how many times you get distracted, it's how many times you come back, keep coming back, because that's a part of the dance. That's the part of the deal and reality of the human experience and of the spiritual journey. The Dalai Lama, Buddha, everybody, their mind wanders, they just handle it well with acceptance and compassion, and with patience and persistence, they keep going. So what I discovered, because I started getting frustrated. 11 hours, and you imagine 50% of that, your mind's wandering and you keep catching yourself and you get irritated. So then what I realized, this is the deal. This is the game. So love it. How many people play golf? Golf is a hard game, but people love it and keep playing it. I saw a thing that says, a thing that described golf. It says, 1, swing. 2, swear. 3, look for your ball. 4, repeat. Or another guy, I heard him say, he says, I hate golf, I hate golf, I hate golf. Hey, I just hit a nice shot. I love golf, I love golf. Well, that's what it's like with the mind. It will always jump and dance. And so what I started noticing, you know what they told you? Second days are hard. Second day is hard. 6th day is hard. We'll get to 6th day in a second. And the reason the second day is because your mind is jumping around and you don't know what to do yet. So here's what I discovered. Besides the acceptance and compassion and patience and persistence, I started realizing this is the game and I'm going to love it. I'm going to learn how to play the game and be persistent with it. That this is good work. This is important spiritual work. So I'm going to keep letting my mind wander and bringing it back. Letting my mind wander and bring it back, bringing it back, bringing it back. Because the more we bring it back, we drop into moments of peace. We drop into levels of clarity and insight. That the mind does its deal, but if you keep coming back and enjoying the game, it says, delight yourself in the Lord. And that's what you do. Let the prayer meditation, let this practice, even with the mind, let it be a joyful experience. And persistently and consistently do it. If people could life golf and keep doing it, don't you think, and it's hard, don't you think we could love meditation and even the challenge with the mind, keep doing it, and keep doing it? And the final thing I learned was about dealing with our stuff. You remember when they warned you about, they give a warning about day 6? And the reason is because when you sit in silence for that long, one of the things that happens is your stuff comes up. Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body. He said every human being has what he calls a pain body. It is an energy that is stuck of unresolved hurts and frustrations, disappointments, anger, regret that we have in us that we never resolve, never process, and never release. We bury things. We hide and deny things. We sweep things under the rug and they bubble up. So I had some stuff come up and my thought was, you ever had this thought? I thought I was over that. Anybody ever thought that? Something popped, I thought I dealt with that. And then the other kind was, I knew I had some stuff and that stuff came up, but I had no idea that it was still pretty intense. So stuff I thought was over came back. Stuff I knew I had was more intense. But here's the one that was the kicker, was stuff that came up that I never realized, that I never had a clue that stuff was in me. I never had a clue that I held on to some stuff for something I don't even hardly remember. And so I started thinking, what's up? This is painful and hard. This feels uncomfortable and tense. And, you start thinking, something's gone wrong. Where's my peaceful thing? And you really start just kind of wondering what's going on. And so here's the deal. Long periods of silence, besides peace and getting to learn your mind, will bring up your deeper stuff. Because as human beings, we would rather stay busy and have that stuff never come up again. But the fact is, something isn't going wrong. It's actually going right. Because now your soul is ready to be liberated from those things that have been buried in our subconscious that have stopped us from expressing our love more, or being more vulnerable or honest or caring or creative. Those things have been holding us back. And so them coming up is a good sign. It's not that we failed. It's not we did anything wrong. I didn't go to my counselor or my teacher guy all week, but I did on day 7 because it didn't get better. He said 6 was bad. He didn't mention 7 and 8 were just as bad. So I went to the guy and I said to him, this is kicking my... I was on vacation. I can say anything I want. So I said that. And he smiled and he said, it's supposed to. If you were here and it wasn't, I would be wondering if you were following the right path. And the fact is, I knew it was the right thing, but sometimes my human self needed a little reassurance that I'd be okay, that you're on the right path, you're doing well. And so the deal is, you got to keep going. You got to keep going. There's an example I use in my prosperity class, and if you've been in it, you've heard it, is if you have a glass with dirt on the bottom, how do you get dirt out of the glass without touching the glass? And the way to do it is you pour water in it. And so you pour water in it, and you keep filling, even when it's overflowing the glass, keep going. But what happens is the dirt starts coming up. And it starts coming up so it can come out of the glass. And so let's call water prayer and meditation. You do it, you keep doing it, and what happens is stuff starts coming up, and immediately you think, man, something's going wrong. This gunk is coming up. Where's it coming up from? But the fact is, nothing's wrong. You're doing the right thing, and you need to keep going in those times. See, the human self wants to give up at those moments, but that's the time you've got to keep hanging in there and keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. Keep up the practice. David Hawkins says that releasing and practice, people stop after a while when they feel good. But he said you have to keep going, because you will unearth things deeper in you, and greater wisdom and insights and breakthrough will come from a deeper place that you don't even know if you keep doing it and keep doing the practice. And is it uncomfortable when that stuff comes up? Yes. A student went to his meditation teacher and said, my meditation is horrible. I feel distracted. My legs ache. I'm constantly falling asleep. This is horrible. And the teacher says, it'll pass. And 2 weeks later, or a week later, a student comes back and he says to his teacher, my meditation is wonderful. I'm so aware, so peaceful, so alive. It's wonderful. The teacher smiles and says, it'll pass. One of the things that they were teaching in the program was to develop a mind of equanimity. Meaning that when you're happy, be happy. Don't think, I wish this happiness would last forever. I don't want this moment to change. And when you're feeling sad, just feel sad. Life is life. It's a symphony. It's got highs and lows. It's a tapestry with different textures and flavors. It's a smorgasbord. Some things are sweet, some are sour. And the point is, experience it. Live it. Feel it. Don't judge it. Don't try to change it. Don't try to hate it. Don't try to fast forward it. Let life be life. That whatever it is you're feeling, because life is a miracle. And life is a miracle not just when a child is born or you've got some mountaintop experience. Life is just a miracle when you're crying in the fetal position under your bed and you don't want to come out. Life is a miracle then. Life is always a miracle. Sometimes, you ever hear people say, we're spiritual beings having a human experience? Well, sometimes I think we're spiritual beings trying to avoid a human experience because we want to avoid pain, avoid tears, avoid discomfort. Guess what? That's a part of the miracle of life too. Is this making sense? Okay. Because I got nothing else. This is what I have, so if it doesn't, you're out of luck. No, anyway. So here is what Blaise Pascal, who was a French philosopher, said. He said this in about 1640. All of man's misfortunes stem from one thing: man's inability to have inner stillness. That stillness brings peace. It brings clarity. It renews us. It brings inspiration. It shows us the patterns of the mind. It shows us those things and how to handle it, how to find acceptance and compassion, patience and persistence, and to love the game. And also, it brings up our stuff, but so that we can be healed, so can we can be liberated, so we can feel more alive, and we can live a deeper experience of God and love. Let's pray. Close your eyes, everybody, take a deep breath. And so we just give thanks to that living Spirit of God, knowing that the greatest way that we could experience levels of joy and fulfillment is to take time to be still and to consciously feel God's peace, to consciously open ourselves to God's love, but to also consciously allow ourselves to let whatever things that are holding us back bubble up so we can be free to be an even greater channel of love and light, to experience life more fully and deeply. Jesus said he came that we may have life and have it more abundantly. And if we want to have an abundant and joyful life, we need to take time to be still and to sit in the silence. And so it is. Amen.